we've had a snack, all our coffee. It's time to introduce our next speaker. Slightly different topic, being right to repair. Now this has been a hot topic for this industry for a long time, and we're fortunate to have, could I say, an expert? Yeah? Now, I've already apologised to Willie, because I'm not very good at reading things out loud, but there's a few things I've got to make sure I get right. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically Willie's expertise is right to repair and the legislation around that. Correct me if I did do any of this wrong. He's a board member of the Repair Association, advocating for right to repair legislation. He focuses quite heavily in the agricultural side of things. He's also a member of the Nebraska Farm Bureau and the Nebraska Farmers Union, member of the Right to Repair Association. And basically it's fairly obvious what they do. They advocate for what's very important for us. I had the pleasure of having a chat with Willie and his wife last night at the stadium. That's kind of where I got to know a little bit more about what he does, and it's really smart stuff. Probably smarter than anything I've ever done. But I think I'll have a lot of good insights for us. Just picking his brain for that short time, I got a bit of benefit out of that straight away. So I think hearing what he has to say to us today might shed some light on what is something that we all need to pay attention to. So, Willie, welcome.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate it. So, what I want to start off with today is I want to make sure by the time I'm done talking that you, as audience members, have gotten value out of the conversation. The way I like to do that is I'd like to start with your questions. And at the end, we'll go through and make sure that all of those questions get answered during my talk. So, is there somebody willing to start out with like the first thing that they want to understand out of the talk about right to repair? Just shout it up. Please? Are we winning the battle? So by the way, I believe in catalog, so I give rewards for people who participate. So I'm just going to call it winning. And that's actually a really good question. Who else has got a question? Or a thing that they want to have happen by the end of this conversation, so that they know that they've gotten value out of the hour that I've been speaking. Please, anybody.
Does it only impact ag and construction?
So I'm just going to say only ag, construction, and implied in that is heavy machinery, right? Mining, etc. Here you go, Michael. That's pretty good. It hit the table twice now. All right, yes, over there, Bruno.
Does it affect other countries than the U.S.?
Countries. U.S. I'm going to just put U.S. question mark, okay? That's good. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. That's your question, okay?
Never my question.
Okay, great. There we go. That's good. All right, what else? What else do you guys want to know?
What components?
What components? That is an excellent question. By the way, if you see I'm a creative speller, just go with it, okay? Yeah, I've been known to be spelled creatively. What else? Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
Software.
Say it again.
Software.
Software. Got it. What's your question about software?
How do they protect it?
How does the manufacturer protect it, or how do you use software in your work?
It's Both, because who's the owner of the software of your machine?
Oh, that's a fabulous question. I love it. And this talk just went 3 hours. But anyway, no. Just kidding. Just kidding. I see Tiffany going, oh no, lunch is going to be cold. No, sorry, go ahead. Who else has a question or that they want? Yes.
Does this pertain more to dealers or end user in terms of like, information and transparency?
So the question is, who does this affect? Is it owners of the equipment? Is it the dealers? Or is it the distributors, right? I kind of expanded it.
Okay.
Okay? So those are the three. So I'm just going to put down who here. Any others? By the way, these are perfect. That's exactly what I want to hear from you guys. So if I answer these 6 questions, you guys will be satisfied, right? Probably. Managing over there. Any other last chance on the questions. And by the way, if you've got one, yes, go ahead.
Are we joined with our previous answers?
Okay. I'm just going to call that partnerships. Does that make sense? Yeah, kind of expand it. And who are the allies? Right? All right, that's a really good question. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to go forward. If you have some other question that comes up in the middle, feel free. We'll jump in. We'll add it in there. Okay. I got to remember what my next slide is. Okay, the questions. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about me and how I got involved in the issue of right to repair. My grandfather was on the board of directors of John Deere for 30 years. He ran their research and development arm and was responsible for bringing production tractors as a product to John Deere. And I want that to sink in a little bit here is John Deere was not selling tractors until my grandfather brought it to John Deere and developed it. There were other people, not just him, but that's how recent the tractor is. That's how close we are to this issue. And I say that so that you understand that the transition from horses to tractor wasn't that long ago. And the transition that we're now in the midst of mechanical to electrical or computerized is going to be as dramatic as the transition from animal to mechanical. Okay? So I'm going to talk about what right to repair is, what has changed that makes right to repair now an issue where for years it hasn't been. Why does it matter to you? Recent successes that we have, what the next steps are in this process, how you can participate, and I mean you as everyone in the room. And then we'll go back and see if I answered the 6 questions here, okay? But first, what I want to do is I want to bring to your attention a book called Tractor Wars. It's the story written by the historian at John Deere of how tractors came to be. What was the development of them, who did what, when, kind of thing. Now, I'm not so interested in the details of on March 16th, 1916, Ford put out his first tractor. By the way, it wasn't a Ford tractor, it was Ford's Son tractor. Because the board of directors of Ford Motor didn't like the expenditures on tractors. A bizarre concept in my mind, but anyways. So it's an interesting read from the point of view of history. So if you want to get a sense of what is happening in the midst of your world right now, I invite you to take and read the book and kind of see the parallels. See the parallels of that you are working with mostly mechanical devices, and the transition incredibly quickly is now happening to electronic controlled devices. So what is right to repair? Well, simply put is I bought it, I own it, I can do what the hell I want with it. And I should not be encumbered, I should not be controlled by the manufacturer. And up until about now, in the last 5-10 years, that was kind of a no-brainer. Because the manufacturer had no way to control your activities with something that they sold you. So that they regularly were supportive of repair. They actually thought it was a good idea that their dealers had enough service people in the bays to work on your equipment, or that the parts would be available. Okay? And what you've been able to do up until really this whole electronic control thing started was that you could choose who fixed your equipment. You could go to the dealer or not. You could go to the dealer and you could get genuine parts, and that has been a whole marketing campaign for a couple of decades now. Or you could go to the guy around the corner that you trust and and you have a relationship with. My guy who fixed my car is Oscar. I trust Oscar because he does it for me. He gets it done. He tells me what I do need, what I don't need. And I'm not worried about Oscar trying to upsell me something on that one. And, he uses aftermarket parts. I mean, my taste in automobiles is the 150-mile plus versions. I just like to go from here to there. I don't care how it gets there. I just want it to be reliable. So Oscar knows me and knows that. And so when I need a new something or other, he's going to go, oh, would you like a rebuild part? Would you like an aftermarket part? Or do you want the manufacturer's brand part? And he knows I'll never ask for the brand part. He says, if you think it's a good part, put it in. That's fine. So that's what right to repair is. Right to repair is, and has been for decades, since Henry Ford rolled the Model T off the line, is if you have a Model T, you have two of them side by side, and you wanted to switch a part, no problem. They fit. And that was part of the genius of Ford, was that every Model T had all the same parts, and all of those parts fit in every machine. Okay? That's the change that's now happening. Electronic control, what that means. First of all, you've got to know that there has never been a software package that has come out that has not needed to be updated. Right? I mean, it's insane the amount of updates that you get on your iPhones, for example. So my iPhone, I upgraded it yesterday to iOS version 17. It's not 7 or B, 17. And one of the things that Apple did a number of years ago was when they sent out an update, they put in a little bit of a routine that said, if this phone had a screen that was not a genuine Apple product, they would take and brick the phone. They would turn off the phone and you wouldn't use it. So everybody who had gone to their local store to get their screen fixed because it was cracked, and the repair person used another screen, a comparable screen that was functioning perfectly well, and they replaced it. Once that person downloaded the update, their phone no longer worked. It was called Error 53. Error 53 was a deliberate attempt by the manufacturer to control the parts distribution of cell phones. Fortunately, the Repair Association did a lot of press about it, and it got to our friends in Australia, and our friends in Australia have a government agency. Is it the Consumer Protection? The what? ACCC. The ACCC looked into this, and the ACCC said, that is a violation of Australian law. We now fine you $12 million, and by the way, you have to revert back so that you no longer shut down those phones. Now, the question we talked about earlier, or one of our questions up here is, well, what parts are now being serialized electronically so that it gives the software that kind of control? And the answer to the question is an ever-growing number. An ever-growing number. So you may actually take the proper part from the manufacturer and put it into the new as a repair, but unless you get a handshake, i.e. permission, from the manufacturer, that part won't fully function. Even to the point where the entire device won't function, i.e. Error 53. So it's important for you to understand that the service of upgrading the software also gives those manufacturers the opportunity to control or change that particular product that you or your customers customers have bought. That's an incredibly powerful, different way of doing business these days. The master of that is John Deere. John Deere now controls over 70% of the combines in the United States. 70% of the crops that are harvested are harvested through John Deere equipment. John Deere is vicious about controlling their software. By the way, that process of having control and dictating to the owner what they can do in terms of repair is illegal. It has been illegal for over 100 years in the US. And it's legally called tying. But guess what? John Deere is John Deere, and they are doing it no matter what. I've had conversations with federal regulators that defend John Deere's illegal activity. I point out to them that it's illegal activity. I point out to them that the laws that they are charged with enforcing say that what John Deere is doing is illegal. The administrator of the US EPA has written a public letter stating that it is illegal. And yet, John Deere still gets certifications of their equipment in the US by the EPA. That's how much control is given to a corporation through this electronic mechanism. And yes, it's illegal, but guess what? If you're trying to harvest your crop, are you going to sit and argue with the tech who brings his laptop out and takes 15 minutes to connect the parts together that have already been installed? Are you going to argue about whether that's fair or not? Of course not. By the way, 98% of all farms in the US, of which there are about 1 million, just over 1 million, 98% of them are family operations, family owned. Do you think the family owned operation, I don't care how big they are, except maybe Bill Gates's. By the way, Bill Gates is the largest agricultural landowner in the US. Interesting little statistic. Do you think they have the ability to argue with the dealer / John Deere? No, of course not. Every farmer I've ever talked to about this issue, they go, oh, I'm not gonna raise a fuss. Because dealers don't have nearly enough technicians to repair everything that need to be repaired. They'll put me on the end of the list. And guess what? They're the ones who lose their profit. The cost to agriculture is about $4.2 billion a year because there isn't right to repair. Of that, about $1 billion is in excessive charges for repairs. The other $3.2 billion is profit that's falling on the ground in the form of crops falling on the ground because they're not being harvested in a timely manner. So, this is illegal, plain and simple. The Federal Trade Commission knows it is. The Department of Justice knows that it is. The President of the United States, in his Executive Order 14036, declared right to repair in agriculture a priority for his administration 2 years ago. Why isn't it done now? Why are we still having this conversation? Fascinating to me. Oh, and by the way, there are 17 lawsuits against John Deere that have all been consolidated in the Northern District of Illinois as an antitrust case. And in that antitrust case, a hearing last month, not only did the lawyers stand up for those 17 cases, which represent several hundred farmers, but will be likely to be a class action suit, the Department of Justice sent a representative who testified in court in favor of the plaintiffs, the farmers. But still, John Deere is getting away with it. Still, Caterpillar is getting away with it. By the way, there are 85 companies that have been certified by the US EPA for non-road combustion ignition engines. And none of them are following the law. All of them have used this electronics and this update capability to control the device post-sale. I actually had a John Deere employee tell me that they made the machine so they own all of the data on the device. And I'm like, wait a minute. So you saying Apple could say, any picture that I take with my camera, Apple owns the copyright to? That's insane. But it's the mindset. It is what we've accepted. I was talking to someone last night at the stadium, and they said, oh yeah, we fix things all the time, we do a great job, and then when we're done, and we've replaced the ECU or we've replaced the engine, we call the dealer to come and finish the repair because it's not done. And I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you doing that? Well, we just have to. That's the way the machines are made. I said, but you realize that's illegal, right? That that Caterpillar requires you to buy a service from them after the machine has been sold to the owner. And almost everybody I ask ever in that is like, I had no idea. I had no idea that tying was an issue. So the reason that it's going to matter to you is more and more and more parts are going to get an electronic serial number in them. So for example, somebody said, oh, well, we just do wear parts. We're not worried about this because it's just wear parts. And I said, yeah, let's take a look at Hewlett-Packard and their printers. Guess what? Hewlett-Packard in their printers has a software counter. And it's connected to the internet. And if you have not bought Hewlett-Packard supplies for that printer, they'll shut down that printer. It's like, where did they get off doing that? Again, they've got the control, they've got the huge monopoly of it. So I believe that what is going to happen in the next 5 years, unless serious action is taken, is that many of the wear parts that you now sell or distribute will start to have electronic serial numbers embedded in that particular part. And with that electronic embedded serial number, you will be required to get a handshake, get permission from the manufacturer or the manufacturer's rep through software. Totally insane in my mind. By the way, what does that allow the manufacturer of that equipment to do? They can shut down that equipment because they want to sell new equipment. They can just say, oh, we're done supporting that. Goodbye. And by the way, that happens with less well-known products. They have, when the companies no longer support that product, they shut down the capability of the piece, of the device. This is a map of the United States. In the last 10 years, we have had introduced right to repair legislation of a flavor in 46 of the 50 U.S. states. Arizona, New Mexico, Mississippi, and Utah are the 4 that we haven't had any right to repair legislation in. I think we will get them this year. One of the most fascinating things to me about this whole issue is once legislators hear about this issue, they do hearings on the issue, and it gets to the floor for a recorded vote. 87% of the time, they vote in favor of right to repair. Now, by the way, in the United States, 87% of any issue is gargantuan, right? To get agreement on 87% of it. And then as a matter of fact, that 87% was prior to last week when the California Assembly and Senate passed right to repair for consumer electronics, cell phones, and I think appliances, passed both houses unanimously, both chambers unanimously. That's going to happen again and again and again and again. Colorado passed agricultural right to repair this past spring. I was testifying. It was a 7-hour hearing. And there were something on the order of 60 dealer employees who testified for the first 6.5 hours of that 7 hours. It was brutal. But so I got up. I was the last person to testify, and I was having a dialogue with one of the senators who was obviously going to vote against it. And I said, well, when my grandfather was at John Deere, he had 158 patents, and 38 of them were on the manure spreader. That was one of his focuses of his invention, or his inventing. Some people think it went genetic, but we won't go down that road. Thank you, that was my joke. Just wanted to break it up here. So Colorado passes right to repair for agriculture. January 1st, John Deere will be required to provide these software tools in order to fix the equipment. By the way, has anybody heard of the John Deere MOU that was signed with the American Farm Bureau Federation? Thank you, Michael. So, in January 8th, one Sunday, I was in church. I get this call from one of my cohorts saying, you won't believe it. John Deere has agreed to make all the tools necessary for repair available. And I said, you're right, I don't believe it. But they signed an agreement and they said they would do all of the things that we've been asking to do. As of last week, when I checked my software that I bought from John Deere called Service Advisor, I'm still not able to do what dealers are able to do. In other words, John Deere flat out lied. Period. And they got the American Farm Bureau Federation as cover for this. Boggling to me. Interestingly enough, I helped draft the initial MOU that we, in Nebraska, as a member of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. We sent it to the American Farm Bureau Federation, the national organization, and surprise, surprise, it came out as a wholly different document. Totally in favor of John Deere, and absolutely no capability to enforce the issue. So we've got to go to legislation. We're going to go to legislation in the states. My suspicion by this time next year, we will have 6 or 7 more states that have passed one flavor of right to repair or another. One of the things that we found is if we just did a bill called right to repair of anything with electronics, the legislators would go, oh my God, that's too much, that's too big of a bite. You can't include construction, agriculture, consumer electronics, appliances, and healthcare all in one bill. There's just too much opposition to it. So we now divide it up into 5. We find out which particular legislator in that particular state has an appetite to bring up whether it's agriculture, et cetera. By the way, we've not gotten any right to repair passed on construction. And our biggest obstacle is unions. The unions are fighting right to repair in Missouri particularly. Fascinating to see that kind of process. Any questions at this point? Why the unions? Because John Deere told them to. Very clearly. When we had the vote in Nebraska on agricultural right to repair a year and a half ago, there are 49 legislators in the whole state of Nebraska. It's unicameral, 1 Senate. It's just a Senate. John Deere sent 25 lobbyists that day. That is how hard they're fighting against this. Because they know if they can control the repair, they can control parts, and they've consolidated all of the dealers. Now they're mega dealers with 25, 30 facilities in any one state. They now can charge anything that they want going forward with it. So it's a monopoly practice. It's a monopolistic practice. By the way, one of the interesting things about John Deere and International Harvesters competition back in the 1910 to 1920, International Harvester was a conglomeration of companies put together by J.P. Morgan. And the predecessor to the Federal Trade Commission was snooping around International Harvester for antitrust reasons, much like they were Standard Oil, et cetera. And John Deere, that year, I think 1910, maybe 1911, that year John Deere's annual sales were $5 million. By the way, that's the sale of 5 combines by John Deere. That was their entire annual sales. International Harvester's profit that same year was $16 million. That's the difference. John Deere took advantage of the threat of antitrust action against International Harvester to grow. They also did some good products. They also did some good R&D. One of the fun stories in our family is about when John Deere and International Harvester used to trade patents. So once a year they'd get together in Chicago to trade patents. And my grandfather, who was the head of research and development, would go down. And for the first day, they'd kind of tit for tat. Okay, you can use this one, we'll use that one, fair trade. For the next 4 days of that conversation, International Harvester had to decide how much money they were going to pay for my grandfather's patents. So at International Harvester, rather than his name Theophilus Brown, his given name, he was known as the Awfulest Brown. That's kind of fun. So what are the next steps? First of all, we're going to go country by country. We've got a wonderful presence in Australia with a woman named Leanne Weissman, who's an intellectual property professor, and I can't remember the university that she's at. I think it's in Cambria. And there has been some phenomenal legislation passed in Australia for right to repair that requires automobiles and now agriculture, soon to be construction, for those tools to be made available not just to the dealers, but on the same level as the authorized dealers. The European Union is an interesting process. They're much more iterative in their process, but they're going along. They are working towards it. Canada, we have an organization in Canada called Can Repair, and Canada is working with their legislation, particularly focused on the issue of interoperability of machines. And so they're using that point of leverage on that one. And state by state, we're going to do all 50 of those. We'll do industry by industry. And we also have the litigation. I talked a little bit about it. We've got the civil suits against John Deere. Those will probably take another 2 years or so during the process. The FTC and the Department of Justice are investigating John Deere particularly. We've provided testimony to them, and we've been interviewed by the FTC. And when I say we, I mean me, myself, and many of the board members of Repair.org. And I have written something called a writ of mandamus. I had no idea what that was a year ago. It is a request of a federal judge to have a federal department follow the law. So the law in the Clean Air Act says that if you provide tools to an authorized dealer, you have to provide those same tools to independents or owners. And clearly that's not done in the John Deere case. So, or the 85 other non-road companies. So I literally wrote this lawsuit. And yes, it was just when ChatGPT came out. So I put the prompt in there. I said, make this sound really legal-like. And I took what I had written and done it, and it came back, and I did a little bit of editing, and I then submitted it to the district court in the District of Columbia. And I got a call a couple of days after I submitted my lawsuit, and it was the chief legal counsel for the National Farmers Union. And he said, by the way, you did a nice job penning that. What's your training as a lawyer? I said, I have no training as a lawyer. I don't even spell well. And he said, well, you did a really good job. Can we join your lawsuit? So it's now a lawsuit with Willie, Cade suing the EPA and the National Farmers Union suing the EPA. So it'll be very interesting. The EPA has until November 4th this year, which is a Saturday, so probably November 3rd, to reply to my lawsuit in detail. I'll be fascinated to see what contortions they're going to go through to justify why they're not following the law, especially given that the administrator has admitted that they're not going forward with it. So here's your participation. You can, in the US, you can do repair.org. In Canada, it's canrepair.ca. In Australia, it's australianrepairnetwork.org. And in the EU, it's repair.eu. By the way, all of these will be widely available to you. You can get them anytime you want from me. Or you can just work with me directly. My email address is williecade@gmail.com. So it's just like it's spelled up there. Or you can go to Twitter. I'm WillieCade7 on Twitter or X. The reason I put my Twitter handle up there was because there's lots of people who kind of are connected with me and lots of things that start to come through with Right to Repair on that one. So I invite you to take a look at those particular pieces and see which one would make sense for you. An interesting thing is also developing. There's an organization called iFixit. They focus a lot on consumer electronics. And they have now what they call a repairability score. That's how repairable a product is. When the iPhone 14 came out, they gave it a 7 of 10. But this past week, they downgraded that 7 out of 10, which was a pretty high score in the world of electronic repair. They downgraded it from a good score to now a don't buy recommendation to a 4. And the reason they did that was because of the tying the electronic serial numbers. If you take 2 brand new iPhone 14s, exact same models, and you take and you swap the screens on them, which you can do, take screwdrivers and all those kind of things, the screen won't be fully functional. Because the phone that has gotten the new screen doesn't have the serial number handshake. By the way, Apple does have a right to repair process. All you need to do is give them a credit card for $5,000. They will ship you 90 pounds of equipment that you can, and you can then pay for the part too, that you can then repair the phone with, and then you can ship back that 90 pounds of tools, and when they get that 90 pounds of tools back, they will refund your $5,000 deposit for the tools. Does that sound like Apple is really committed to repair? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. So let's go back to your questions. I have no idea what my time frame is. I'm going to be early. I can see that now. Partners. Who are partners in this equation? We have a phenomenal number of partners in this. I feel safe to say that it is anybody that's not an original equipment manufacturer. Okay? So automobile has been great. In 2012, automobiles really kind of kicked this off because right to repair legislation in Massachusetts was passed for automobiles. The automobile manufacturers got together, and in 2 years they put together a national MOU that said, no, we're going to make all this information available. By the way, a year later, the trucks did it. I note with great interest that the truck, the combustion ignition engines that go on highways share their information on how to repair their emission systems, but not the non-road. Fascinating to me to see why that's a difference other than just a monopolistic practice. On that one. Are we winning? I absolutely am excited about how much we are winning in this conversation. I'm continuously surprised at the access I get as an advocate for right to repair. I have regular conversations with the White House on this issue. Last week, we spent an hour with the chair of the Federal Trade Commission talking about agricultural right to repair and about what actions that they are going to take. One of my favorites was when the FTC, about 3 years ago now, did a hearing on the issue of right to repair called Nixing the Fix. They got some testimony from a major in the Marines. And he was talking about how they are not allowed to repair some of their equipment in theater because of the restrictions of right to repair. So in a friggin' war zone, they don't want people to repair shit. It's like, are you kidding me? By the way, he's now running for Senate in Missouri. And I'm actually going to do a fundraiser at my house for him in November. So no, it's not only ag. It's not only construction. It is any device that is electronically controlled. Any and every device. So think of it. The Ring doorbell that you have at your front door is now controlled by that. The refrigerator that you now have. By the way, the shortest life expectancy of any part on a refrigerator is its LCD screen or its electronic controls. I, for years, had a Maytag washer that was a hand-me-down that we used for 25 years with 4 kids. We used it for 25 years. I finally had to buy a new one. You're getting a theme here about how cheap I am, right? Finally had to get a new one. It's got electronic controls on it. Within 2 years, the front panel control went out. Guess how much the part was to replace, that I needed to replace in order to save the machine? It was about 60% of the new cost. An insane amount of money. No, it's not in the US. Absolutely every country that is engaged in this will have, if they don't already have, problems with right to repair. And agriculture is a great example here. John Deere is a global company. A significant portion of their product is sold overseas. All of their product is controlled electronically. John Deere is now in negotiations with satellite companies so that they can connect every one of their devices to a satellite so that they can control every one of those devices by satellite. Now, their excuse on it is, well, we just want to collect the data and we want to help the farmers run a more efficient operation. Poppycock is my phrase on that one. What components? More and more, there are more components that are getting electronic serial numbers. So where components? Let's say a set of tracks. At some point, some manufacturer is going to put in there a sensor that says this particular part is about to fail. And they're going to go, oh, okay, great. Isn't this a great service? We can provide this to the owner. We're going to tell them he needs a new part. The owner says, great, I'll put the new part on there. And the manufacturer says, wait a minute. Did you put our part on it? Did you put our serial number on it? Did you tell us what that serial number is so that we can tell the machine that it can now operate, and this is the phrase that they use, safely, right? Oh, no, if it's not our part, we don't know that it's been made to specification. We don't know if it's safe. We don't know any, so we're not going to allow that part to be used in our device. And there are even some instances where what they say is, we're not going to allow the device to work at all because we're not sure that it's safe. In agriculture, that's called limp mode. If a certain set of situations happen, the device is thrown into limp mode, and the only thing you can do is drive it back to the barn. So that is the degree of control. And I'm sure everyone in the room here can go, does that mean my XYZ part? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's going to be an issue on that part. Software. Phenomenal question in the back there. One of the things that has happened is that software, which controls all of this process, has been claimed to be intellectual property inside the machine you own. The idea behind that is, well, if you give someone the source code, they could copy it and they could replicate it. I disagree with you at all. But what software is in the machine is binary code that just is readable by the machine. Without that code, you cannot operate the machine. I'm sure if you take, many of you in the room have probably replaced an engine control unit in some of your products. If you just take that device and put it in there and connect everything, of course that product won't work because there's no software that is determinate for the machine. You've got to download it. Okay? If the manufacturer takes total control of loading the software onto that ECU, you are controlled, or the owner of the equipment is controlled by that contact. The reason that manufacturers can get away with that was back in the early 2000s, there was an organization called Napster. I'm trying to think. Everybody remember Napster? You could get all kinds of great music and everybody's sharing. And it was like, wait a minute. That is copyrighted material. Those songs were copyrighted material. You could bring them onto your laptop and play them. So it was transferable. But the software inside of a CAT D11, you cannot use that software other than on a CAT D11. So it makes no sense in the world why you would have not own that code, that software that is running the machine. Makes no sense that the manufacturer can claim copyright over that particular machine. But the DCMA, the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, protects and says that anybody who traffics in the tools that breaks the encryption of that software inside the machine is doing an illegal act. And literally the Congresswoman Lofgren last month, who helped write and sponsored the original DMCA Act, said, oh no, that's a mistake. We didn't mean to copy protect the software that runs devices. So software is going to be a huge issue. The problem with software, in my mind, is most of us don't have a very good understanding of what it does and how it does it. Interestingly enough, most of the control software that's used today in the machines that you work on is open source software. So it's quote unquote required to be shared, but yet manufacturers don't. So again, it's another whole illegal thing. And it's going to affect everybody. I frankly, if nothing is done about this, I would not be surprised in a decade if this room was empty. That all of the parts would be controlled by the original manufacturer on a monopolistic basis, and there would be no competition. If you buy a product, or a durable good, if you will, for the next 20 years, you'd have to continue to buy from that manufacturer and that manufacturer only. So I suggest to you, this is a call to arms. That is my message for today, is this is a call to arms for your industry and for many others, but for your industry, because I'm talking to you today. Good. Did I answer everything up there? Are there any more questions that anybody has? Okay, and I'm running 25 minutes ahead. You got a question?
No, but I got you.
You got me? You're going to cover for me?
I am.
Great, I got it.
Is there any known programs or anything that you can get into?
Kelly, come on up.
So when you're a non-OEM dealer, that you can get your laptop hooked up so you can bypass some of this?
So, I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm sorry?
Your name?
Len.
Len? Len is asking the question, well, why can't we just get the software? Hello? I mean, highway equipment, you can do it. You can go and buy, the ODB2 readers, et cetera. Why can't we do it in our industry? Because you got a monopolistic practice. So the answer to your question is no right now, but hang out with me because I'm working my behind off to make that happen. That every independent service or owner of equipment will have all of the tools, including the software, necessary to repair their equipment. Period. End of conversation. And as a matter of fact, MGP, representative from, U.S. representative from the state of Washington, and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez is her name, who campaigned on the issue of right to repair, yesterday filed an agricultural right to repair bill that has one mistake in it, and I will ask her to correct it. But it'll be very interesting. By the way, the next thing that owners should worry about on this is the data. John Deere really, really wants all of the data that's being produced by these machines. As a matter of fact, that is their chief reason, in my estimation, as to why they're not making those kinds of tools available to people. By the way, the ability to take that data and reverse engineering the profit and loss of an individual farm or an individual field is huge. I'm going to be working with legislators in Nebraska this coming season, which is first, second quarter of the year, to pass data legislation that requires the ownership of the data be the landowner for crops. Machine data for the people who own the machines. And then if and only if the owners of the data want to share it with somebody else, they can. Okay? Data is a huge, huge issue. Yes?
Are there any manufacturers that are actually following the law?
Not that I have found. I would love to find them.
I think that should be recognized that there are, right?
I totally agree. And, you know, one of the things that we've been doing in all of our advocacy work is, for example, HP shares a good amount of data, but then again, then they go and do the things like they shut down some of their printers when they control it, right? So it's this. Are you familiar with the frog and the scorpion story? Frog, the scorpion wants to cross the river and asks the frog. And the frog goes, "Are you fucking crazy?" Sorry. "You're crazy. You'll kill me on the way." "Oh, no, we would both die. I wouldn't dare do that." And finally, the scorpion convinces the frog to give him, you know, the ride across the river to the other side. And halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog, and as they're going down, the frog goes, "Why?" And the scorpion says, "I'm a scorpion. That's what I do." John Deere, they're a profit-focused organization. That's what they do. We are going to rely on them to try to create an absolutely perfect, consistent revenue stream for their market. When I look at their behavior, I see that their primary customer is not the people who buy their machines, but it's the stock market. That the thing that they worry the most about is their stock price. And that's, by the way, back to the book. That's one of the really interesting things about the book. At the time in the 1900s, 1910s, 1920s, John Deere was controlled by the Deere family, specifically William Butterfield. And he had a point of view that was years long, not this quarter. It was very interesting to watch that, and the dynamic between what Henry Ford was putting up with as a publicly traded company and his board of directors and his investors to make a profit versus what the family was doing to really create a business. So it's very interesting on that. One more? Nope. Over to you, my friend.
All right, let's give him a round of applause. That was very informative. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.